Bye-bye, BlackBerry. What's in your iMessage metadata? Was Yahoo paranoid enough? And the science of babies with 3 parents. All that and a whole lot more coming up on Tech News Today.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today, episode 1608, recorded Wednesday, September 28th, 2016.
This episode of Tech News Today is brought to you by LinkedIn Learning. Develop talent and keep skills current with expert-led on-demand e-learning. To request a demo for your organization or get a free individual trial, visit learning.linkedin.com/twit.
And by Gazelle, the online marketplace for buying and selling used gadgets. Shop from a variety of certified pre-owned electronics or trade one in for cash. Give a new life to a used device. Visit gazelle.com today.
Welcome to Tech News Today. This is the show where we talk about everything that matters in technology that happened today.
The technos and the jollies.
The jollies and the technologies. And we are the Montagues and the Capulets of technology today.
So esteemed.
I'm Megan Morrone.
I agree. I'm Jason Howell, Montague. Jason Howell - Montague.
Yeah, we're not going to agree on anything, and we're not going to let our children get together either.
No, we are not. Okay. The time has come for BlackBerry to give up the goat on its hardware strategy. Today, during its second quarter sales report, the company announced its plans to close down its phone business, signaling its transition into the Android space was kind of a failure. This doesn't mean that we won't see any more BlackBerry devices, however. They just won't be built exclusively by BlackBerry itself. Those efforts are going to be outsourced to partners, much like the way its last device, the DTEK 50, was. It was built by Alcatel One Touch and modeled after Alcatel's Idol 4. The closure of its hardware business should complete by the end of this fiscal year. This was kind of signaled a while back, and we wondered if it, you had to kind of wonder how BlackBerry was doing in this transition into the Android space. They had made a promise, I think, last year even, where they said, all right, we're going to continue to try for this next year, and if it doesn't happen, we're going to make hard decisions, which everybody kind of assumed meant getting out of the hardware business. BlackBerry CEO John Chen said that September was the deadline for this, and here we are, and no more BlackBerry-made hardware. What do you think?
Well, I think it's smart for them. I think they say they're going to focus on software and security. The shares rose at the news. I mean, it's much less of a risk for them to focus, to pivot, I guess. I mean, I never had a BlackBerry, so I can't say I'm sad about that hardware. Goodbye, BlackBerry. Don't let the door hit you on the way out. That's how I feel about it.
I mean, it's obviously it's too little, too late. They probably should have made some hard choices a while ago, and by a while, I'm talking like years ago, 5 years ago. So, when the iPhone started rolling around, especially, so going back even further. I mean, there was this reluctance of change, reluctance of realizing where the market was heading. So to a certain degree, BlackBerry kind of dug its own grave when it comes to its hardware not surviving. I'm very curious to know if even the software strategy is going to work for them, at least in the way that they've done it right now. Like, they just released the software suite, BlackBerry software suite for Android not too long ago, like three weeks ago or so. And I don't know if your business is reliant upon that software and services aspect of things, and I realize that's just one piece of it, but I don't know how much that has really taken Android users' mind share by storm.
Yeah, I guess we'll have to see.
Yeah.
Well, The Intercept says Apple's new Messages app might hide your conversations from prying eyes, but the names of the people that you contact could be accessible to Apple, and they could hand that over to authorities in some situations. Joining us to talk about what this means is Iain Thomson, reporter at The Register. Welcome, Iain.
Thanks, Megan. Always a pleasure.
So what are your thoughts on this report?
I don't really see why people are getting their knickers in a twist about it, to be honest. I mean, Apple has never denied that it took metadata from its products. It only keeps the logs for 30 days. I think the only people who are going to be seriously concerned about this are the ice sheep who buy Apple's devices on the assumption that they will keep absolutely everything that they do secret forever and ever. Amen. I mean, obviously, the document The Intercept got hold of is quite interesting in seeing how police services intend to use this information. But I'm certain, as far as I'm aware, Apple has never actually denied that it was willing to hand over metadata when it came to legally produced warrants for it. So, I mean, if you're an Apple fanboy or girl and you thought that everything was totally cushy and there was never going to be any information passed to the police, then you're going to be disappointed by this. But if people honestly thought that, then they were fooling themselves.
Well, I guess the information itself it's who you might have contacted. So it's the name, not even necessarily contacted. It's people that you said, maybe I wanted to see if Jason was, had gotten himself an iPhone, was on messages. And so I would try to put his number in there. That would be the only information. So it seems like so little information that you could draw conclusions from it. But it seems like you could more often draw false conclusions from this information. It doesn't seem like, well, maybe I just put someone's number. Is that like something that someone could use against me in court?
Oh, yes. I mean, in fact, when you look at it, I was having a chat with one of the guys who used to work for the CIA and is now in private industry. And he was saying that if you're actually looking to track people and work out the networks and connections that they have, then metadata is far more useful than the actual contents of the messages themselves, because it builds up an image of who exactly you're contacting them, when you contact them, what IP address they're on. All this is data which Apple stores. And then you can build up a network of connections, and it's almost like a sort of mini social network. You can see who's talking to who and how frequently. It gives you a very good method of tracking the individuals in question. We've already seen this in action before with the case of General David Petraeus, who, if you remember, got censured for handing out confidential army documents to his mistress. Now, the reason they caught on to that was because they were able to backtrace the IP messages, the IP addresses of the messages that he was sending, rather than actually reading the messages themselves, identify her as a prime suspect, and then work round from then. So if you're severely worried about, sort of the government tracking you and the rest of it, then, metadata is far more useful than the content of messages. Because A, it allows these networks, and B, you don't have to go through the tedious process of reading through endless emails of, hi, the cat's been fed and medicated, see you soon, blah, blah, blah. Awful lot of data that generally has to be read by humans. Whereas with metadata systems, you can feed this into a fairly smart bit of software and instantly get an entire network of who the target is communicating with, how often, and sort of where they're doing it from.
Yeah, a lot of this stuff that's, searchable, trackable online, and a lot of the revelations around the Edward Snowden, kind of aspect of all these things. I think what's interesting about this to me is that it's more a signal of intention than it is a signal of like action, right? Like you might think that by opening up your phone and punching in 3 numbers or whatever, all you're doing is punching in 3 numbers, then you delete it and you move on. Like that might be your initial thought. But in this case, what is happening here is that when you're doing that, if I understand this correctly, that is actually sending a signal to Apple to then find how that matches up, pairs up with contacts you may or may not have, and pulls back information. In doing so, there is a log created around that. So it's not the typical example of, oh, well, you obviously were in contact with this particular person on that date. It's, I had an inkling to look up this particular person. And in doing so, in just like laying that in there and never hitting enter, never actually executing anything whatsoever, you've sent, a signal, a clue, whatever you want to call it, that can be picked up on after the fact. And that seems like another level to me.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point, Jason. I mean, it is one of those things where they've, people don't quite, we all love the convenience of having a mobile phone, the ease of use and the rest of it, but very little thinking goes into what goes on behind the scenes. I think in this case, it was quite encouraging that Apple only keeps this data for 30 days, but I can certainly see the police gearing up to use it. They're getting increasingly savvy about using mobile phones in this way. I mean, it's taken them long enough to get their act together on this, and they tended to overreach in the case of certain government agencies. But I think local police are now sort of, they're aware of this. They want to use these tools. And as long as privacy is respected, then I can see very little reason for them not to. It's just a question of making sure that we have the rules firmly in place to see that this isn't abused, and to see that it's carried out in a responsible manner. But I don't think there's any telephone maker or telco out there who wouldn't be prepared to work with a lawful request for information in this matter. And it's going to be increasingly important in cases going forward.
So you said no one would really be upset about this except the sheep. I resemble that remark. Thank you.
Oh, come on. It's like you don't believe blindly in Apple, Megan. It's just that there are a number of people out there who really do. And it's both sad and deeply, deeply amusing.
Right. I just needed you to say that, not me. It's better when it comes from you. But I guess I'm
the one going to be getting the death threats.
Right
then,
now,
right?
exactly. So, I mean, what Sam Biddle was basically saying is what we need Apple and other companies to do is not just come out with those statements. Like, I mean, Apple spent the better part of the first few months of this year, saying, like, we use end encryption. We are for your privacy. We would not turn this information over. But, like, when you really get down to the technical aspects of it, there are parts of it that they are turning over. I mean, they made a statement to The Intercept. They said, they didn't deny it, but they said, yes, that is accurate, that document that you have. So, I mean, I guess, do you agree that companies need to be more specific about the technical things and not just these lofty, we believe in your privacy statements?
Oh, no, I agree with that totally. I just think Satan will go to work on a snowplow before it actually happens. I mean, Apple has been hoisted by its own marketing petard in this. I mean, they did a very, very good fight against the FBI in the San Bernardino case, and a huge props to Tim Cook for not bowing to government pressure. But I think there's no real incentive for companies to tell their customers exactly what information is being collected on them and what it's going to be used for. There's nothing but downside for the companies in doing this. And whereas if they keep quiet about it and just confirm it when somebody actually raises these awkward points, it's from a PR and marketing standpoint, it's a much better way of damage control. Now, I agree with you totally, and I've had arguments with Leo about this, but companies should be a lot more upfront about what data they're collecting and how it can be used. But there's no real incentive for them to do it other than by customer pressure. And the vast majority of customers either don't know or don't care. I mean, it's part of our job as journalists to actually keep people informed on this. But, with however many millions of devices out there, your average Joe or Jane on the street isn't going to care that much until it affects them personally or until they read a headline which scares them silly.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Well, Iain, thank you so much for explaining what this means to us. Iain Thomson is a reporter at The Register. He's at Iain Thomson on Twitter. Thanks so much for coming on.
Pleasure as always. I'll see you soon.
Take care.
See you soon, Iain. All right, a half dozen current and former Yahoo employees who spoke with the New York Times anonymously say that Marissa Mayer's priorities when she took over Yahoo was that of creating a fresher, cleaner look for Yahoo products. That, of course, came at the expense of taking security seriously in the way that nearly all of Silicon Valley's top companies do nowadays. Yahoo had a number of insecurities when she took over, but the security group within Yahoo encountered numerous roadblocks in its attempts to tackle those issues, according to this report, due to concerns within the company that true security measures would actually result in a layer of inconvenience for the users, which could lead to a shedding of those users in the process. Emphasis on its security could have prevented a number of security issues from the past 4 years, including the stolen credentials of 500 million users that went unnoticed for 2 solid years. Of course, we talked about that. I think that initially kind of broke last week. In its defense, investments in security have increased 60% from 2015 to 2016. So maybe they're getting a little bit more serious about it now than they were. But it sounds, security is always inconvenient. If you're adding layers of security to protect users, it's always going to be more inconvenient than it is if you don't have those things. Do you think this was a big oversight? What do you think?
Well, I don't think they're alone in their issues with security. I do think, that's every company's problem, security versus efficiency. When I was doing marketing for Microsoft, that was always the issue. People don't want to be warned too much. They don't want to know. Right. Like, it's just, they don't care. Just like Iain was saying, like, the average person doesn't care. This stuff is just bothersome to them until it affects them personally. Right. Until someone's saying, like, yes, someone is selling your email address and your social security number on the internet, because we wanted to have a faster, we wanted email to be faster. Right. We wanted, we didn't want you to have to, we didn't want you to have, we knew all along that your password was compromised, but we didn't want to bother you, So I don't know. I thought this was a really interesting look into how they did security. The internal name for their security team was the Paranoids. That's what they were called, the Paranoids, which, gives you a little idea, I guess, of how they, felt about security. But then there were people that they interviewed that said, that they came to work there because there were security experts that came to Yahoo because of this team, because of the work that they were really pushing. And yeah, they did just butt up against Meyer a lot. And I don't know. I don't want to jump on the Marissa Meyer, bashing bandwagon, but it does seem like she did make some mistakes here, but maybe not mistakes that other big companies haven't also made.
I mean, this was like half a dozen of current and former employees just all throwing her under the bus at the same time, basically. So take from that what you will. But Yahoo hired Chief Information Security Officer Alex Stamos. And while he was there, he was trying to push end-to-end encryption. Apparently, he was consistently shot down in the interest of convenience and of speed and whatever, and ultimately left for Facebook in 2015. You can kind of understand why if you're hired to do the security position and then you can't do it effectively, repeatedly, time and time again, and the situation is as dire as it kind of sounded like behind the scenes at Yahoo, you can completely understand why he might jump ship.
Yeah, but I also have to question some of the details in this Times article. They said Yahoo didn't start paying bug bounties until 2012, where Google started paying bug bounties in 2010. But Apple started paying bug bounties 2 months ago, so it's like they didn't mention that. So I think every company has their problems with security. And I think, Yahoo is a good punching bag because they're basically gone.
Right.
Well, the most powerful woman philanthropist on the planet, who just happens to be a former Microsoft product manager with a degree in computer science, is now throwing her weight around to get more women in tech and to figure out how to keep them there. According to an interview in Back Channel, Melinda Gates is stepping out on her own to dedicate resources and attention to the women in tech problem. Gates says measurement and research and how to keep women in tech doesn't exist right now because people haven't put money into it, and money is the first step in her plan. Gates has been traveling all over the world with her foundation, working with women and girls, and every time she came home, she says she looked at what was going on here and realized that we have some real problems when it comes to gender equality in the workplace. So this interview is great. If you're interested in this topic at all, read it. Basically she says data. That's what changed that was the philanthropy model for the Gates Foundation. Get as much data in there, and then that's how you can figure out how to spend the money. She talks about investments in family leave. That's huge. Not just maternity leave, but family leave, getting it for both parents, whatever their gender is. And she talks also about the leaky pipeline, which is a huge issue. It's not about just getting people. It's how and where do they fall out? Is it elementary school? Is it middle school? Is it high school? Is it college? Is it afterwards? Is it their first job? Where are these women falling out? And we talk about it a lot. And I know everyone who comments in the chat room has strong feelings about this. Like, people will say, like, I know a lot of women in tech, but they leave because they're not interested. Or, there's no one in my engineering classes. I can't help that. There's no women in my classes. So, we just have to figure out what the problem is before we can fix it. And unfortunately, money is how we figure out the problem.
Yeah, and they've got a lot of it, thankfully.
They do.
That'll help. When Melinda Gates was a computer science major, a third of CS majors were women, and that's trailed off significantly since then. I think now it's like 18%. So that's a drop. Why is that? One of the examples that she sets out, and I think it's kind of the perfect example of when we talk about these topics on the show, sometimes we hear criticisms about it for the reason that you're kind of saying, like women or minorities, let's say, are not interested in these things. And, why is it important to pay so much attention to this kind of stuff? She sets out an example of how Apple's health apps leave out something like menstruation, for example, which just kind of illustrates the divide that takes place when you, let's say, don't have the women, a significant perspective of women there to provide that insight. Like, this is something that every woman, for the most part, deals with for a good part of their life. So it's a very important thing. So why is it not there? It's a lack of perspective. And so, if so much of our life is built around technology and around computer technology and all this kind of stuff, that's why it's so important to get everyone involved, so that, the thinking behind the scenes is, represents everyone in front of it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Preach.
Yeah, I shall preach. iPhone users have been left in the cold when it comes to high-scale virtual reality. Sure, there's Google Cardboard, but that's kind of low-rent VR, not on the same playing field as other efforts like Samsung's Gear VR. Occipital is aiming to change that with its new VR dev kit that brings inside-out room tracking to mobile VR. It uses an iPhone and one of Occipital's Structure Core 3D sensors that's mounted on the device. Now, HTC Vive does room tracking, but it has a lot of other hardware requirements, including a computer rig outside of the headset and a massive string of cables behind you that connects into the back. This kit is designed to run entirely on device. It's also designed to stay power efficient, and they claim that it's has super low latency and low jitter. I think on the Upload article they played around with it, and they suspected that the latency wasn't quite as low as the creators were saying it was. I think they were claiming somewhere around 10 milliseconds ish, somewhere around there. And the problem with latency and jitter is that it can increase the likelihood of feeling kind of nauseous when you're using it. But still, just the fact that all of this stuff is happening disconnected from an external computer somewhere, and you can use your iPhone and the sensor to track the room, which is kind of what you're seeing there, to get the space right. And then the obstacles, there's there's collision detection. So the obstacles that are in the room when you're locked away in this immersive VR environment become part of your environment. They might be painted as something different, or you might be able to sit on that chair. In the VR world, it's like a lily pad, or whatever the case may be. Sounds really cool, and it sounds like a really great kind of VR solution potentially for iPhone users.
Mm-hmm. iPhone users deserve VR too.
Yeah, exactly. And Google's working on VR with Daydream, into Android itself. It's early days for that too. Mobile VR just really seems to be the way that you can expect VR to kind of move into the next, the next phase, let's say, at least for the masses. There's always going to be the people that have the money and time to spend setting up their rig to do an HTC Vive, but not everybody's going to do that. And so mobile VR is way more accessible. So be curious to see where that goes.
Well, here's a late-breaking story. Sources at the Financial Times says Spotify is in the market to buy SoundCloud. Now, this would combine users and offer Spotify a service that knows how to do social, they know how to do video, podcasting, all of which Spotify could use all of these to beat Apple Music in the streaming media race. This is exciting.
Yeah, I think it's good news for SoundCloud, because SoundCloud has had not the easiest go trying to move into the next phase of its existence. And I think, I'm sure every company that begins wants to go it alone, and be the success story that ends up in this crazy money-making thing, and they are at the top of the pyramid. But in this case, SoundCloud's been at it for a long time. I love SoundCloud. I think they have a really nice differentiated service. It's very different than any other music streaming service out there, because it really is kind of like YouTube for audio. And then they do all of this other traditional music streaming stuff now, which hasn't, I don't think, been a huge hit. So personally, I think that for SoundCloud, it's a great asset to have. I'm very curious to know if they end up integrating all of that stuff into into Spotify, or if SoundCloud still kind of continues to exist as a Spotify product, and maybe there's some cross collaboration there, because SoundCloud users are also very loyal to SoundCloud specifically. So, Spotify comes along and says, all right, and now you're using Spotify with some of these features, and some of them that we just let go of, that might not be good enough for SoundCloud users. I'm not sure.
So SoundCloud just started the paid version just a couple months ago, which is March, right?
Not too long ago.
So, so some people are used to paying for it, I guess. So
I don't know how much that really equates to. They've got a lot of users, but the majority of those users are, kind of free users, essentially, uploading their own music in many cases. Sometimes it's DJs uploading their mixes, and then you've got a whole, kind of slew of licensing questions there for a company like Spotify to go ahead and take in if they take over, within those DJ mixes are a bunch of songs. How are they licensed? How does the rights holder get money for that if the user's uploading that? They've got a similar kind of identification model as YouTube, where it kind of scans through and they, have it all set up to where they can identify the song and throw some money back to the creator in a lot of cases. But yeah, I'm very curious to see how this pans out and if it actually happens.
Exactly. Well, what happens when doctors mess with mitochondria? PBS News Hour science reporter Nsikan Akpan explains. But first, let's take a minute to thank LinkedIn Learning, the sponsor of this episode. If you're watching or listening to this right now, I am going to take a wild guess that you like learning things. And so whether it's skills for your own life or your professional development, LinkedIn Learning helps you. It's personalized, expert-led, on-demand e-learning from LinkedIn. If you manage people, you want to keep your team engaged. LinkedIn Learning is the perfect way to promote professional development. LinkedIn Learning will identify the precise skills you or your organization needs to achieve set goals, and it will create personalized recommendations using LinkedIn Network Intelligence. Your team will have access to more than 9,000 courses, with more than 25 courses added every week. The world is changing fast, and we all need the skills to keep up. The LinkedIn Learning Library includes courses taught by world-class industry experts and covers topics ranging from leadership skills to design principles and programming. Learn anytime, anywhere with their bite-sized segments that can be viewed on any device, online and off. The videos provide immediate problem solving, and you can download them to learn on the go. It's the perfect way to help team members close a skills gap without interrupting your latest project. Team solutions are available for as little as $2,000. Grow your network and your career. Visit learning.linkedin.com/twit to request a demo for your organization or get a free individual trial. That's learning.linkedin.com/twit, and we thank LinkedIn Learning for their support of Tech News Today. A new technology called mitochondrial replacement therapy, or MRT, can help prevent children from inheriting genetic mutations, but the controversial technique also leads to children being born with 3 biological parents. Joining us to talk about the science behind MRT is Nsikan Akpan, digital science producer for PBS News Hour. Welcome to the show, Nsikan.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going well. Thanks for coming on. So a new report came out in New Scientist about a baby born who wasn't born this week. But tell us what we know so far about his birth.
So this is a 5-month-old boy who was born to Jordanian parents who sought treatment at the New Hope Fertility Center in New York City. And they did so because the mother in the couple has mitochondrial disease. She has a mutation in her mitochondrial DNA that causes Leigh syndrome, which is a pretty nasty brain disease, which is fatal after 2 to 3 years typically. And so for like a quick refresher on mitochondrial diseases and how they work, so you can picture the cells in your human body as an avocado. I mean, you guys have a lot of avocados in California, so you're familiar with them. So the pit of the avocado houses what you think of as classic DNA, right? So it houses the nucleus. Which is where 99% of the human, 99.9999999% of the human genome is housed. But in the meat of the avocado, it's packed with stuff, and one of the things that is in that stuff is mitochondria. They're shaped like jelly beans, and they're the powerhouses of the cell. So if you have, and those mitochondria also have their own genome. It's a lot smaller than the DNA that's in the nucleus. So we have about 3 billion base pairs in the nucleus of DNA, whereas the mitochondria genome is like 16,000 base pairs. And even though the mitochondria only carry about 37 genes, those genes are pretty important. So if you have a mistake in them, it can really screw up your mitochondria and pretty much can cause all types of diseases like disease of the heart, disease of the muscles. Pretty much any cell in the body that requires energy can be affected.
So what they're trying to do is allow parents who, if the mother has this disease and is going to pass it on, allow them to have a child that is biologically theirs, but not pass on this genetic mutation, correct?
Yeah, exactly. So there are 2 types of techniques with regards to fertility. One is called pronuclear transfer. And so what you do is you take the father's sperm, you take a donor egg from a mother, or a donor egg, and then you take a mother's egg, and you just swap the nucleus between the 2 eggs after they're fertilized. And then there's another technique called spindle transfer, which basically happens before fertilization, where you have the two eggs, you swap the nuclei, and then you fertilize them.
It's funny. I mean, it's already you're introducing how complicated this is when you say the donor, mother, father, donor. It's complicated, right? I mean, so there's what have been some of the things people are saying about this, objections to this?
So pro-nuclear transfer has only been approved in the UK. And there have been objections to mitochondrial transfer in general, because this isn't actually the first time that this technique's been used and that you've had a child born with three parents. Sorry, there's a lot of hand motions going here. So this isn't the first time that we've had a child born to three parents. There was a clinic in New Jersey in the 1990s that was using a slightly different technique. And it caught on, and there ended up being 30 to 50 children that were born using this technique. But the issue was that while some of the kids were healthy, there were a fair number that ended up having genetic disorders anyway. And so the FDA ended up banning clinical trials using this therapy in 2002, and that pretty much ended the use of that technique back then. So there are question marks surrounding whether or not this new technique will have issues as well.
But of course, whenever you talk about this, people think, oh, is this the kind of DNA tweaking that might change, we can choose the color of our baby's eyes or hair or make them smarter. This isn't what we're talking about here.
No, so that's what we sort of call gene editing. And it's been in the news lately because of this new technology called CRISPR. Mm-hmm. And so that can edit, individual genes that you find in the nucleus. It's very precise, but we don't know what might happen if those genes, get passed on to a child and then end up in the general population. We don't know if there could potentially be side effects, or there's a scientist at UC Davis, Paul Knopfler. He has a really good analogy where, say you try to fix a bone disease and you just fix one gene related to that bone disease, but, then all of a sudden the kid has super strong bones, right? And becomes like Wolverine. Do we want those genes to be passed on into the general population? And that's a little bit different from a mitochondrial replacement therapy in that the mitochondrial only inherited through the mother, so potentially if you restricted this to boys, then it couldn't enter the general population.
Taking this technology specifically, MRT, and kind of the process behind it, you span this out in 5-10 years. I realize it's hard to kind of look into the future, but what exactly does this lead to if this is the starting point?
It's hard to say. You can fix these very severe mitochondrial diseases for now, but we don't know if there could be side effects in humans because we've never tried this in humans. Mm-hmm. People are already doing it now, so I don't know if you have to worry about 5 to 10 years from now. If you look at this particular case, you had Jordanian parents who sought treatment from New York doctors. The doctors couldn't treat them in the U.S., so they treated them in Mexico. And so, there's a liability question, in the long run, who's responsible if something goes wrong, if there aren't any regulations.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Well, Nsikan, thank you so much for joining us. Nsikan Akpan is a producer, a digital science producer at PBS News Hour. You reported on that awesome story we did about the lionfish killing robot. Thank you for that. I love your work. Nsikan is also has a PhD in pathobiology and molecular medicine. It's true. And science communication. So it's amazing to have someone who knows the stuff and can also communicate it to us. Thank you so much. You can also find Nsikan on Twitter at Mon Science. Is that what is it? M-O-N?
Yeah, MON Science. That's right. Yeah. and thank you for having me on. I'm a long-time listener, first-time caller.
Thanks. Take care.
Thank you.
Right.
Have a good night.
Take care. Bye.
All right, earlier this week, we talked all about the new Roku devices. Megan mentioned that there were over 100 channels to search from. Thanks to Jay for writing in with a correction. He said, on their blog, Roku says their search feature now scours the content of more than 100 channels streaming on Roku. They also say you can browse, add, and rate channels from more than 2,000 streaming channels offered in the Roku channel store. He says, I've used RokuGuide.com to come up with the final word on the Roku channel count. RokuGuide.com lists exactly 4,339 public channels accessible directly through Roku's channel store and 173 private channels accessible only by manually adding the channel at Roku.com using the provided channel code. Of course, every week, that count is rising. Continues to say there are additionally several private adult channels, but I don't feel like researching and counting that particular database. And that's the end of the email. And I mean, this is actually, I'm surprised that I wasn't too aware of this with Roku. I've never had a Roku device, but the channels function, now that I'm kind of hearing a little bit more about it, and like I did a search after this email to kind of see what it was all about, sounds really cool.
Yeah.
I don't know. Sounds like a great extension of, just the Roku for a limited, an app on your phone or whatever the case may be. That channels really seems like a big marquee thing that I just apparently never knew about.
Yeah, I guess so. But it sort of feels like back in the old days when there were, 300 channels and nothing good on.
Well, yeah, maybe there's a little bit of that.
But
too.
we're on Roku, and we are good. At least my mom thinks so. Thank you so much, Jay, for writing. Like, I love when, he emailed me and he said, you said 100 channels. I think there are more than that. And I was like, yes, I must have meant 100,000. But then I read and they said 100 searchable. And Jay agrees with me that it's very confusing. So thank you for doing all the counting for us, Jay.
Appreciate all the math. Always. TNT at twit.tv for more math if you want to correct us on other things. Coming up, how does the general public feel about the future of self-driving cars? Are they willing to give up their lifelong habit of driving themselves? But first, we want to thank Gazelle. They are the sponsor of this episode. Gazelle is the trusted online marketplace for buying and selling used electronics. We talk about electronics all the time. So this is how you get those electronics. You make some money off of the stuff you already have. You can trade in your old device for cash. You can buy certified pre-owned devices, or you can do both. For trade-ins, you simply visit gazelle.com, find your device, get an instant quote. Shipping's free, payment's fast, and you're done. If you're looking to buy a certified pre-owned device, Gazelle has a variety of iPhones, iPhone 6S, 6S Plus, iPads. They also have Samsung Galaxy phones, all sorts of different devices to choose from. Each device is fully inspected. It's backed by a 30-day return policy and sold without a carrier contract. You go to gazelle.com, see what your old device is worth, check out the selections of certified pre-owned devices. Gazelle is now offering financing on all devices by Affirm. You simply provide your basic information. You'll get instantly approved, and you can pay off in 3, 6, or 12 months. Each monthly payment can be made through bank transfer, check, or debit card. You just select financing with Affirm when you're at checkout, and you'll see all about it. Gazelle also offers a 12-month warranty for cell phones and iPads powered by Assurant Solutions. That's going to cover water damage, cracked screens, hardware defects, and more. You've got help available 24/7 to process claims, as well as return your device right away. And you don't want to miss out. Getting the best value on certified pre-owned devices. Right now's the time. Visit gazelle.com. You can get devices in good or excellent conditions. Good condition actually shows some gentle signs of wear and tear, but offers consumers great prices. The devices are still awesome, so you might as well get them. All devices have been put through a rigorous 30-point inspection process. That's going to ensure that they're in perfect working order when you get them. Devices available for support by major carriers, AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, and Sprint. And they've got all, pretty much most of the products that you're going to hope to find there. iPhone 5S, 6, iPad Air, iPad Mini, 16 gig, Galaxy S5, Galaxy S6. Just take a look. They've got tons to offer, and you can get lost in their selection. Give new life to used electronics, trade in for cash, or buy certified pre-owned. Just visit gazelle.com to find out more and to see what they have for you. And we thank Gazelle for their support.
TNT's fan of the day is Dave Ellis on Twitter, who says, how I watch TNT whilst on a break learning CCNA. So that, Well, I'm guessing that's the Cisco certificate program.
Yep, that's it. Certified Network Associate.
So as long as we're talking about certificates, I would like to throw this in. I got an email from viewer Trenton who was wanting to know more about certificates. And if anyone out there has gotten a job through their certificates, who has a positive story about getting your certificates and using them to help you get a job, email me at megan@twit.tv because I am going to put those together. Because I guess Padre said the other day, like, certificates are garbage. And I think I need to talk to him about it because I think he was talking specifically about something. So, yeah. Give me your certificate experience, megan@twit.tv, and show us how you watch or listen to TNT. Record a video or take a picture of yourself or your setup, post it to Instagram, Google+, Twitter, or Facebook. Use the hashtag HowIWatchTNT, and we are going to find it.
Yes, we will. We will look for all day and night until we do find it.
You will look.
I promise you that I will.
I don't look.
That's true.
I just read the email. I don't know. Somehow I find that easier. You read the socials.
I like to hashtag from time to time. A new poll released by Kelley Blue Book shows that Americans might like the idea of self-driving vehicles, but when it comes to relinquishing complete control of their cars to robots, 80% say no way, opting instead for the option to drive themselves at the very least. 64% say they absolutely need total control over their vehicle. When it comes to safety, 51% say they want to keep driving, even if it's safer to cede control to a smart vehicle. Their significance, it's pretty major resistance here, is to the idea of self-driving vehicles that they have absolutely no controls for humans, right? Like the thought of getting into a self-driving vehicle that has no way for respondents of this study, at least, to involve themselves with the steering wheel, the pedal, or any sort of human intervention. A third of the respondents basically saying that they would not ride without that access, and that's super duper important to them.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's freaky, the idea of getting in a car without, but imagine going from a horse to a car. That was equally freaky. And yet we did it. I guess 4, they said, this article says 4 is the sweet spot. That's full autonomy plus human to take over. But that has been proven to not be so safe because, what they've shown when they've tested it is that once you check out, once you're like, oh, you're driving the car, like you don't have the same kind of, I can respond, I can take over, in an emergency situation. So they're going to have to figure out what to do there.
Right. It's pretty easy to be distracted when you think that you are not required 100% of the time. I have to imagine that's a skill that we'll have to kind of get used to if that's the case. 41% of the respondents, by the way, there were 2,200 U.S. residents that were polled. 41% understood the term autonomous going into the study, autonomous driving. 59% were unaware. So, definitely a little bit of a balance between people who really kind of understand what it means and who had no clue whatsoever what it actually was. So there you go. TNT records live every Monday through Friday at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, 11 p.m. UTC at twit.tv/live. You can be part of the show by emailing us at tnt@twit.tv. You can leave us a short voicemail. That's 260-TNT-SHOW. And you can find us on Twitter at Tech News Today TV.
Find all the ways to subscribe to our show at twit.tv. And if you want to tweet at me about your certificates or anything, I am at Megan Morrone.
Yeah, certificate me on Twitter as well. I'm at Jason Howell. Thanks to our technical director, Brian. Thanks to Matt for the prompter scrolling. Thanks to Kevin for editing. And thanks to you for talking tech with us today. We'll see you all tomorrow. Bye, everybody.